All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Headline Hits with LW. Today is Monday, January the 10th, 2022. Hope you all are having a great start to your week. I know that I'm going to be busy today getting a lot of stuff done, and I was looking forward to Headline Hits this morning because I got a lot to talk about. I think some of it's very interesting. Let's just put it that way. So let's jump right into the news. And let's go to old Puddin' Pop here. We're going to talk about him some more. So Joe Biden plans angry speech in Georgia attacking voting integrity laws. So let's talk about that a little bit. Um, Joe Biden is planning a dramatic speech on voting rights in Georgia on Tuesday, which is tomorrow, focusing on nearly the newly passed election integrity laws in the state. Um, and this is a Politico piece here. He's going after the filibuster. He's going to condemn the Republicans for this new voter change, this new voter law in Georgia. And we read further down there, and Cedric Richmond told Politico, which is the director of the Office of Public Engagement for the White House. He makes the statement that we are doubling down, kicking into another gear, and we're going right to the belly of the beast or ground zero for voter suppression, voter subversion, and obstruction is in quote what he says. So he says the tone of Biden's speech will be similar to his speech condemning the J6 protest and forcing his anger on former President DJT and the Republicans. So they're upset. Biden will condemn the election law reforms passed by the Republicans in Georgia and signed by Governor Brian Kemp in March as racist. And just one more example of how dangerous former President Trump is for democracy. So I read this whole article, and it's just truly amazing to me how they can call this suppression and subversion, obstruction. These poor people just can't figure out how to vote. And so it goes further to say that the reform passed in Georgia included voter ID requirements. Again, we've talked about this here at Headline Hits. My son needs an ID just to buy a school lunch. Okay. But yet it's such a horrible thing to require voter ID when it comes to any election, whether it's a local election, whether it's a school election, and especially a presidential election. So it goes on further to say that they're also talking about the restricting the number of drop boxes and block officials from sending absentee ballots applications to all voters, which that kind of gets into voter harvesting, and is a big deal. So the Democrats were in such a rage against these new rules last year, remember, that they decided to have a whirlwind of activism that resulted in Major League Baseball canceling its All-Star game in Atlanta, Georgia, because they were upset about it. They boycotted it. Well, that boycott cost the city of Atlanta an estimated $1 million and hurt majority-owned businesses. Yeah, can't make this stuff up. Can't make it up. That's what they do. That's what they do best. They hurt Americans. So we're going to move on to the next article that I pulled out for Headline Hits for old Puddin' Pop here. Accountability. Let's talk about accountability. Remember, old Big Ears himself and Biden have been preaching to us for the last, I don't know, decade probably, about accountability and transparency, and how they are going to and had the most transparent administrations in history. They attack Trump constantly about not being transparent, but this article proves different. And not only that, but as Americans, we all know how transparent he was. Heck, every opportunity there was to talked to the press as Trump either walked to and from Air Force One or Marine One, or it didn't matter. He was always stopping. He was always having conversations. He always did interviews. He tried to keep us informed the best that he could. While this guy here, it's a totally different story. So let's dive into it. So Joe Biden's first year marked a fleeing news conferences and interviews. So it marked the end of his first 12 months. This month will, and the office with signature record of holding fewer news conferences than any of his five immediate predecessors is just mind-boggling. So when you go further into this article, it states that his approval ratings that have sunk to levels never seen before by another recent Oval Office inhabitor, says Breitbart News. What does that mean? Well, that means the previous 5 to 6 presidencies um, had better approval ratings than the most popular president of all time, the president that got the most votes of all time. The numbers are not adding up for this guy, and it's blatantly obvious. So, according to figures compiled by the Associated Press, Biden has done just 22 media interviews, fewer than any of his 6 recent White House predecessors at the same mark in their respective presidencies. It goes on to say that the 46th president has held just 9 formal news conferences, 6 solo, and 3 jointly with visiting foreign leaders. And I'm not going to go any further. I mean, I think you get the point, right? It's just this guy, he's nowhere to be found. He's not telling us anything, but yet he's the most popular president of all time. But there's no transparency there. It's he's still in the basement, in my opinion. The guy is still in the basement. How do you win a campaign when you are in the basement? I mean, seriously, how do you win a campaign when you're in the basement? So let's move on to the next one. Racism, corruption, and scandals reduce the global Golden Globes from Hollywood's biggest party to Twitter feed. So what are you talking about, Mike? Well, what I'm talking about is Hollywood's in trouble. And it looks like, which I don't really care. I don't watch it, but I want to make a point with this. So stick with me. All right. So even through NBC dropped the 2022 Golden Globe Awards, the embattled Hollywood Foreign Press Association is proceeding with the 79th edition Sunday night without listen to me, without a telecast, without nominees, without celebrity guests, without a red carpet, without a host, without press, or even so much as a live stream. Now, you're asking yourself, well, why are you even bringing this up, Mike? Who cares about the Hollywood elite? I don't care about them, but my point is this. We are making a difference. We are making change, because what's happening, and I'm not going to read any further on this article. I'm just going to tell you my point real quick. Um, people are not watching lamestream media. CNN, the communist news network alone, has lost, what did I repeat last week? I want to say it was somewhere in the 70s. 74% of their viewership has they've lost 74% or 78% of their viewership. NBC, CBS, Fox News has taken a huge hit. Because why? Because the conservative movement, because Americans are not tuning in any longer. They're not going to listen to that horse shit. Well, that also bleeds over into Hollywood. It bleeds over into sporting events, into the NFL and Major League Baseball and the NBA and hockey. Um, all these political activist athletes, we're tired of it. We're tired of you. And so we're no longer going to support you. We're no longer going to support your sports. And that includes Hollywood. That includes films. Nobody's watching them. Nobody's paying attention. Last year, they had the worst Golden Globes award ceremony in history. And I'm happy about that, to be honest with you. I'm glad that we're all paying attention. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Let's talk about Kevin McCarthy and the majority in the House and the Senate here. So this goes back. They're pulling a plan out of Newt Gingrich's playbook from 1995. I think it was February 22nd of 1995. Newt Gingrich unleashed the plan for the Republicans, which was the contract with America. Now, I know that we all feel like politicians are evil and they're corrupt. I don't disagree with that, okay? But what I am looking at, and I'm trying to look through this lens, is this type of stuff right here would definitely make a difference. Okay, is it the perfect answer? Probably not. We definitely can need to continue to get involved at our local levels and clean house and get rid of these politicians. But at least I see an effort here. At least there's a little bit of hope. So let's talk about this article. Kevin McCarthy lays out the GOP commitment to America, a clear contrast between Republicans and Democrats for the midterms. Now, why I see a glimmer of hope here and why I look at this through my lens is they are focusing on the 2022 midterm elections, and they're trying to draw a contrast between what a conservative is and what a liberal and what the left is, which the left is all about America last and destroying America. So they want to draw a plan out here on these are the things that we're going to focus on to try to turn this country back around. If you will give us your vote in 2022 and put us in the majority instead of the minority in Congress and in the House. Now, you're saying to yourself, well, Mike, it doesn't matter. My vote doesn't matter. Horseshit. Your vote does matter. We still have to be engaged. We still have to get involved, and we still have to vote. So let's read into this article a little bit further here. So White House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy laid out for Breitbart News an executive long form interview, blah, 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 the strategy heading into 2022 midstream elections, which will determine which party controls the House ahead of the 2024 presidential election. Now, the way I look at this is a big move for us and for the conservative movement. Why is that? Because if we can get control of the House and we can get control of the Senate before the 2024 elections, then there may be things that we can do to look at voter integrity and to try to make that difference to where everything is more accountable. Like I said, and I took this from Bonafide the other day, listening to one of his videos when he says, listen, last year's Super Bowl is last year's Super Bowl. You're not going to change who won the game. Okay. What we can do is focus on how horrible the referees were and change the referees for the next game. Now, that doesn't mean that I align with everything Bonafide says, because I know some of you are out there going to take this and twist what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that makes sense. I understand that we all want to correct 2020, the election. I do too. But what's the reality of that? We're already into 2022. We need to really focus, in my opinion, on how do we try to make a difference this year in the election. So let's read further into it, because what he does is he starts going into the commitment to America, which is a preview in the last on the Hill video that he did in his interview, and he goes into a little bit of detail here about how they want to focus on election integrity. And so I found that very interesting, a little bit hopeful that at least it seems like somebody is trying to make a difference here, and it's up to us to keep their feet to the fire, to hold them accountable. So if they're saying this, we can't just let talk be cheap. We have to force them to have actions behind their words. I have a different view, he says. I don't think majorities are given. I think they are earned, which I agree with. But, sir, you've earned it multiple times and you've let us down. So this is where we come in. If they earn the right to become majority leaders in the House and the Senate, then we have to hold them accountable for what they're putting out there, which is this commitment to America. I think you also should not just be sorry, I lost my place here. I think you should also be very truthful to the American public about what you would like to do as the majority. It's not just being the majority for the sake of being the majority. You're being in the majority to make America better. um, yeah, we definitely want to hold these guys accountable. He goes further to say that we have 23 states that have already improved their election laws. Now, that's to be seen yet, but if 23 states have stepped their game up and are starting to require voter ID, then I guess, in my opinion, maybe we're on the right path. We just got to stay focused on these guys and not let them get away with any of this crap. Okay, let's move on to the next headline here. Let's talk about T for a minute. So GOP Representative Carl to the Dems. You can't keep trashing Trump, talking about J6, and expect people not to get tired, bored, or angry. I won't go too much into this. Basically, he was on the radio, which was Alabama Radio FM Talk on 106.5. He was just letting the Democrats know that your playbook, this is the same playbook you use over and over again. And really, the J6 event, you've wore it out. You've wore your welcome out. It has no traction. People aren't really paying attention. At least important people aren't paying attention to it. And move on. It's time to move on. They have no opinions. They have no real game plan on how they're going to make any type of change. It's just point the finger at the previous administration. Well, let's see. During the campaign of 2015-16, they did nothing but attack, attack, attack. You're racist. He won the election. And then the whole time he was in for 4 years, attack, 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 attack. Now he's out. They got their boy in. And instead of anything good coming from this administration, it's still attack, 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 attack. Blame, blame, blame. Pull your head out of your ass. Okay, so they also talk about this, which is very concerning to me. In the same interview, he talks about the 1.7 trillion that would be less than 9% of the one. Listen to me. Less than 9% of the $1.7 trillion is going for the infrastructure bill. Let that sink in for a minute. Do you know what 9% of 1 trillion is? Well, round it up to 10%. 10% of 1 trillion be what, $1 billion? Right? So more than $1 billion out of 1.7 trillion is going for the infrastructure bill. Let that sink in for a minute. Okay, 91% of the 1.7 trillion dollar infrastructure bill is going toward social programs. And most of that money is unaccountable, end quote. Are you kidding me? I've talked about this several times on my show. We are being screwed. That's all I got to say on that. Let's move on to the next article here. The next article is talking about the CDC. I'm probably going to get this lady's name wrong, but I don't care because she's a dingbat anyway. So she was on Fox News the other day. She did an interview, and Bear said, quote, you're losing public trust and confidence in the CDC, end quote. So I won't read the whole damn thing, but he was interviewing her. He said, hey, you made the statement that once you got into this position in the CDC, that you were going to be transparent and that you were going to build back the trust that people had lost in the CDC. He says, Dr. Walski, you mentioned the confusion about the guidelines. And over the past year, the most recent example is obvious on isolation and testing, but other guidance in the diaper wearing and educators being vacation before returning to the classroom. Before you took the job officially, you emphasized that one of your primary goals was to restore the public trust. But in this time, do you think that it's fair to say that the trust and confidence of the public has gone down since you took over the CDC? She goes on to say, well, thank you, Brett. Thank you. You know that this is hard. Have you, we have ever evolving science and ever evolving variant, and my job is to provide updated guidance to context of rapidly rising cases. Yeah, your job is so hard. Anyway, more BS. I'm going to move on. I can't even stand to look at this lady. I can't even stand to look at this next guy, but it's part of my job, so I'm going to stick to it. All right, Blinken. There will be a massive consequence if Russia invades the Ukraine. So he goes on with ABC's George Snapalapalopoulos, or whatever his name is. And we're talking about the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken. So he said on ABC the last week that they're looking at the Ukraine and Russia and what's going on over there with Putin. So old Georgie Poo here, he says, we know that President Putin has forces surrounding Ukraine on three sides. He's made it clear that he believes Russia and the Ukraine are all one people. Do you think he's already made the decision to take control of the Ukraine? And this is what our great Secretary of Defense has to say. But Georgie, I don't know if his decision has been made yet. It's clear that we've offered him two paths forward. One is through diplomacy and dialogue. The other is through deterrence and massive consequences for Russia if it renews its aggression against the Ukraine. And we're about to test the proposition of which path the President Putin wants to take. This week, we have important conversations that are taking place between us directly and NATO, and to the Organization for the Security of Cooperation in Europe. And the question really now is whether Putin will take the path of diplomacy and dialogue or seek confrontation. Well, I can tell you that Putin is probably not scared of any of you. Any of you. And this administration has already shown us that it has zero stones when it comes to world policies and any of that stuff. He's just an empty shell of a guy. So let's move on to the next article. I can't stand to look at him either. All right. This is New York City, and this should bring and pop up some red flags for you. And I want you to listen to me carefully on this one because I'm going to talk about a few other states and cities that are doing the exact same thing. This right here with the border crisis that we have going on and people flooding our southern border brings real concern to me, folks. And I want you to listen. All right. New York City Democrats grant voting rights to nearly 1 million non-citizens. Let me repeat that. New York City Democrats grant voting rights to nearly 1 million non-citizens. And this isn't a first-time thing. I'm going to read further here, and I'm going to tell you something. You need to pay attention to this. Up to 1 million non-citizens living in New York City will have access to the ballot box after Mayor Eric Adams, a Democrat, on Sunday approved legislation by the city council to automatically become law. How does that work? Just automatically. All right. I believe that New Yorkers should have a say in their government, which is why I have and will continue to support this important legislation, Adams quotes. And he's saying this to the New York Post. Now, I agree with part of that statement. I think all New Yorkers should have a right and say in their government. I think everyone in America should have a right and say in their government if they're citizens and if they're here legally. While I initially had some concerns about one aspect of the bill, I had a productive dialogue with my colleagues in government, of course, a government has all the answers that put those concerns at ease. I believe allowing the legislation to enact um, to be enacted is by far the best choice, and I look forward to bringing millions more into the democratic process. You can't make this stuff up. Even former Bill de Blasio, who used to be the former mayor of New York, but I think he got his ass ran off, however, repeatedly cautioned the legislation will almost certainly be subject to a legal challenge for violating New York law, but yet they're still going to push forward with it. So let's bring up some of the other cities that are doing this. But listen to these percentages. The law promises to be a boon for the citizens' massive 3.1 million strong foreign born population, which makes up almost 40% of the residents' population, while at the same time diluting the other millions of American citizens' votes. Yeah, that's right. It dilutes it. Okay, so let's scroll down here, and who else is doing the same thing? More than a dozen communities across the US are already allowing non-citizens to cast votes in local elections. I'm not making this stuff up. It's right here in front of me. I'm reporting it to you, including 11 towns in Maryland and 2 in Vermont. Bingo, there you go. More people voting that shouldn't be voting. What are we going to do about it? Okay, here's one that I'm going to skip over real quick. I just thought I'd bring it to your attention because we've talked about it several times here at Headline Hits. But I find so, man, this world is messed up. All right, God bless you. All right, trans. When I read this, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I'm reading this word for word. And I know I have problems pronouncing people's names and certain words, but some of this stuff that I read, it's so ridiculous, it makes me sound like an idiot. Seriously, trans male swimmer beats UPenn trans female swimmer Lia Thomas. Transgender UPenn swimmer Lia Thomas recently lost a 100-yard freestyle race to a transgender male swimmer after a string of nearly unopposed victories. Okay, I'm not going to spend much time on this, but what this is Thomas is a man presenting himself as a woman, while his opponent, Isaac Hengen, I can't even pronounce the last name, is a woman transitioning to become a man. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to just mic drop that one right there. You guys think about that one. Let's move on. Okay, here's the last 2 headline hits, and this is where my blood pressure is probably going to rise. My tone is probably going to change, probably going to get riled up about this. But this one right here really, to be honest with you, pisses me off. We talk about it all the time. Biden touts that vacations for children, yet the percentage is, I can't even make these numbers up, 0% to 0.02% of children's sickness cases, fatalities. I'm trying really hard to keep myself in check here, but I'm getting pissed just reading this. President Joe Biden is continuing to pass and push a mass vacation for our children, despite the fact that, and I'm not making these numbers up, these are the numbers that are being reported across the country. Despite the fact that 0% to 0.02% of children are dying because of the sickness. The FDA is now authorized booster shots for children ages 12 to 15. Vacationing our children is the best way to protect them from the Decepticon variant, Biden proclaimed on Friday. That is his quote, not mine. The Biden administration has, for weeks, continued to push parents to get their children vacation from the Chinese sickness. The Biden administration has even collaborated. This pisses me off. They've even collaborated with Sesame Street as part of the greater effort, greater good. Do this for humanity. Do this for your neighbor. Protect your children. The government's here to help. The greater effort to get vacationed on the radar for the young children. Last year, Sesame Street characters participated in a CNN Communist News Network town hall meeting about vacations, and Biden took it upon himself to praise Big Bird on social media. I'm about done with this. You can read the article. It's in the Breitbart News this morning. It goes through all the percentages, but my God, why are you pumping this poison into your kids when there is a 0% fatality to a 0.02%? Wake up. All right, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of that one because if I don't, I might pop. All right, let's hit this one here. It's the last article of Headline Hits. This stuff is so ridiculous. It's hard to report on it, to be honest with you. At times, I just want to reach through the screen. All right, this idiot that I reported on last week, Pinkerton, New York City's woke district attorney is creating the real life sequel to Escape from New York. Now, I'm not going to read this whole article, but I wanted to make a point here because there was a movie made. It goes through the numbers and the statistics. I'm not going to read all of them. You can do some of this work yourself. But what I wanted to point out was there was a movie made back in 1981. I'm sure some of you probably seen it. I've never seen it, but now I'm going to watch it. There was a movie made, I believe it was back in, if I'm reading this correctly, 1981, but it was with Kurt Russell, and it's called Escape from New York. And I guess Air Force One goes down in the movie. Well, first of all, the crime rate was so bad in this movie in Manhattan that they built a wall around Manhattan Island and it became a prison. And what happened in the movie was Air Force One crashes there, and they had to send in a motley crew of commandos led by Kurt Russell to go in there and rescue the president. So I'm definitely going to watch this movie. I find it interesting. But I wanted the data point that this idiot DA, who is now the DA of Manhattan, New York City, I reported this last week. They're not going to pursue any kind of incarceration for any kind of crimes unless they're heinous crimes, unless they're murder or assault with a deadly weapon that results in serious injury and or rape. That's it. There's only like 3 or 4 crimes that are heinous that they're going to even seek incarceration on. Well, you're saying, well, what does that mean, Mike? Well, what that means is for anything else, for let's say habitual DUI, and let's say habitual DUI results in property damage, or maybe somebody gets injured in it, but doesn't get seriously injured. Any other kind of crime is going to have no kinds of consequences to it. So what's that going to do to Manhattan? What's that going to do to the city of New York? It's going to make it a cesspool of criminals, a cesspool. It's going to result in people going whack-a-frickin' doodle in the city of New York. And you want to talk about people fleeing New York? I also reported this on Headline News about people fleeing these blue states, these blue cities, and running to red states. Well, now that this DEA is in charge of Manhattan, the people of New York, the sensible ones, the real people of New York, are going to get the hell out. And it's going to be nothing but an absolute cesspool of criminal activity. So prayers are with people in New York. I got family that live there, and all I can tell my family is pack your shit and get the hell out. All right. Love y'all. Have a great day. Thanks for joining me with Headline Hits. I know I went a little long today, but I had a lot to report on. So have a great Monday, and we'll just so you guys know, I have a Podbean later this afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm not going to tell you who's going to be on, but I do have somebody that's supposed to be on with me, and we'll see if they have the time today. But yes, there will be another podcast at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Podbean. See you guys there. Love you all. Have a great day.